We're starting this morning by discussing today's biggest news stories with Vanessa, Feltz and Swarbrick.
Good morning.
Lovely to see you both. Right, so let's start with this. Former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe has been accused of being out of touch after suggesting that the solution to the cost of living crisis is for families essentially to stop eating cheese sandwiches. She said it on a BBC Politics show, and this is what she said.
Yeah, but what do you say to consumers who
We've
literally can't afford to pay even for some of the basics if they've gone up the way that cheese sandwich has with all its ingredients?
Well, then you don't do the cheese sandwich.
We're talking about basics. We're talking about absolute basics and staples. We're talking about own brand pasta. You're talking about bread. You're talking about families who cannot afford to feed their children. There's a story today about mothers who can't afford formula milk, so their babies are literally starving at the moment.
Well, I mean, I think this is shades of Marie Antoinette. You know, the people are too poor, they can't afford bread. So she said, let them eat cake. This is kind of the other way around. You can't afford a cheese sandwich. Well, don't have a cheese sandwich. But this is very, very back to basics, isn't it? Not talking about caviar, not talking about roast pheasant. We're not talking about, you know, lamb en croûte. This is a basic cheese sandwich, bread, butter and cheese. Your absolute staples, and I think that does show a certain kind of lordly disdain for real life. And also, if you can't afford a cheese sandwich, because now it costs 40p to make a cheese sandwich at home, which really is mind-boggling. You'd think it would be a matter of pence, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would.
40p, that's an enormous amount. And if you can't afford a cheese sandwich, what are you supposed to eat? What does she think people should eat? I mean, it really is a very unthinking, I think, very unpleasant way of looking at a cost of living crisis.
And for a lot of people, of course, there's no choice about this. You know, they can't choose to go to a different supermarket that has lower prices. All the supermarkets have very, very high prices at the moment. And from the conversations I've been having with various people who've run the supermarkets or people in the food supply chain who ring into the programme about this, there is a choice for the supermarkets here. They could put their prices down. The wholesale prices come down, and there is a concern now that the supermarkets are saying, well, people are paying this anyway, so let's keep the prices artificially high, to the point where the nice people at the Competition and Markets Authority have decided they're going to look into it to see whether or not people are being ripped off in a supermarket. And you think, sorry, have these people not entered a supermarket in the last few years? Of course people are being ripped off in supermarkets. Own brand prices have gone up 25%.
Yes, particularly high, higher than all the more expensive foods. I mean, there should be surely some campaign to ring-fence the basics.
That's what they're doing in France,
bread,
isn't it? Some
cheese
supermarkets are doing that in France. They're actually ring-fencing the we were talking about this with Nick Furry yesterday, ring-fencing the basics.
Yeah. And also there's a big difference if you haven't got a car or you can't get to one of the bigger supermarkets, maybe on the outside of town, and all you can go to is those sort of local ones, that they're much more expensive, that they don't do the basic foods there that maybe cost a little bit cheaper. So it's...
Exactly, but it's always the case that people with more money have more options and are able to, you know, spread their expenditure in a different way. People with less money, more confined, stuck where they are, and stuck with whatever kind of exploitative pricing is really harassing. And this is a really serious story, I think. I really do. And I think it's more than just a sort of throwaway remark from Anne Widdecombe, who maybe might regret it because she's meant to be full of the milk of Christian human kindness. And this doesn't seem to me to smack of that. But I do think it's very serious. And we've heard of heating or eating. This is making it more literal, so you can really imagine what it's like.
And a lot of it comes down to poo, which is the price of fertiliser has gone up enormously. Ukraine and Russia being one of the biggest suppliers of fertiliser, that price is still quite high, and the companies that buy it by a year in advance, it's still very expensive, hence why it's still quite expensive to grow certain fruits and veg.
Right, OK. Let's move on to another story now. A number of people not working in the UK due to long-term sickness has risen to a new record, which is being blamed on working from home. The Office of National Statistics have said more than 2.5 million people are not working due to health problems.
I mean, this is an interesting one because they're saying that there's been so much working from home that people have developed all kinds of back and neck complaints.
By looking at screens.
From hunching over, I suppose, working on non-ergonomic chairs, because it's just you're sitting on your kitchen chair or a stool, or you're working at the end of your bed or that kind of thing. And I mean, I don't know how much of it's malingering and how much of it's far-fetched, but I think lots of people who do work at home do realise, actually, that it's not quite comfortable and they're developing strange, you know, because they haven't got the office chair and the proper design. I don't know.
Tone of incredulity.
I'm sorry, I don't buy the fact that we've got record numbers of people who can't work because they've sat in a chair badly for 9 months. Come on. The reality is this is about NHS waiting lists. It's about the NHS backlog. People can't get their GP appointments. People can't get their specialist appointment. They can't get their operations. And so, unlike a lot of other countries in Europe, we have got a workforce that can't get back to work in the way that other workforces have since the pandemic, because we've got a healthcare system that's so bunged up, people can't get the appointments that they need to help get them back to work.
Fair point.
I mean, this is another sort of emotive one, because the implication is that we follow on from Suella Braverman saying earlier this week, oh, the British are work shy, we don't really know how to work. And the implication is, oh, everybody just wants to work from home and have a good kip and watch TV and not do any work.
I'm not saying that people don't work when they work from home, and they might do it in the garden today if it's nice outside, and good luck to them. If you can get what you need to do done at home and your boss is happy with it, go for it.
Yeah.
But the idea it's because that, you know, sat hunched in the chair or forget it. This is about the NHS. It's about the backlog and it's about the difficulties of clearing it. This country has more so than other European countries.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Prince Harry sought approval from the High Court for a second legal challenge against the Home Office over his security arrangements when he's in the UK. Duke of Sussex wants to be able to pay for protective security privately when he and his family are in the UK. Lawyers for the Home Office argued that it was not appropriate for wealthy people to be able to buy specialist armed police protective security, and warns it sets a dangerous precedent for other wealthy individuals.
Key word is armed, I think, isn't it? I'm not sure that those with enough money who feel like they need the protection, and he probably does, can buy in random freelancers who
guns for hire.
with a gun. I mean, I just don't. In Britain, I'm not sure that should be allowed.
Not
really.
what we want here, do we? We don't want the richest people in society to have their own little armies and armed vigilante groups, even if they do need excellent protection. I mean, obviously, it's a terrible idea.
He has clearly, and obviously everybody knows, if you step back.
Yeah.
But he's still of royal blood. There is still a risk there, isn't he? Entitled to some sort of.
I think some form of protection is going to be needed for him. Whether that comes out of his pocket or the state's pocket, it's a very, very difficult one, because he has sort of left the royal family, hasn't he, really? He's left as a working royal.
But, you know, he's an unbelievably wealthy man by anybody's standards at all. By any standards on this earth, he is one of the top, you know, infinite percentage of a percentage point of people in terms of affluence. Obviously, he's quite right to consider safety for himself and security for his family. That makes a lot of sense. He's one of the most prominently recognisable people on earth. Pay for it yourself and don't recruit from the British police force. That's not right.
I've got another royal story for you here now. The Princess of Wales said that learning to be royal was a challenge. You don't often hear her say things like this, do you? It was quite interesting.
I bet it was.
Huh?
I mean, I bet it was.
Well, yeah.
I tell you,
imagine?
I was really lucky yesterday because I was invited to one of the Buckingham Palace
I saw
gardens.
you.
Oh, God, it's all the royals used to, isn't it? Where's our invite?
Well, you know, and the royal who was present was Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. And, you know, we did say how incredibly demanding it is to do what she does, because you know, you can't scratch your nose, you can't yawn, you can't look bored, you can't take your shoes off. Everybody else was eventually removing their fascinators, which were sticking right into their heads, and, you know, easing into their flip-flops and all of that. And they have to keep this meticulous politeness and interest and smile. And, you know, if they didn't, people would be so terribly disappointed. It really, really matters. Yeah. And I thought, you know, the backbone that they show, I mean, oh, God, that's me.
There you are.
Oh, my gosh, that's me.
That.
Look at that. Can you tell which one I am?
Is that your date for the day?
Which one is me? I went, that's my very close friend. But I just thought that, you know, they do it beautifully, and you do have to learn to behave like that in that kind of a way. It is a bit of an endurance
Lots of
test.
pressure, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What a roller coaster of a day you're going to have, going from talking about your front garden to meeting the king. You know? Imagine if he raises
very varied, that's for sure.
He's got a great sense of humour. He'll love it.
Well, no, I will not be bringing that up, that's for sure. Next story. A school minister to look into Year 6 stats. So today we'll be discussing exam stress.
God, quite rightly so.
Yeah.
I mean, it was obviously wrongly set because children were sobbing. I mean, they're not meant to be sobbing. They've all been adequately prepared for it. And there shouldn't have been any shocks or traumas in what they were asked in that exam paper. Someone got that terribly wrong if the children were so befuddled and shocked. That's really bad.
And can we take a moment to congratulate particularly England's Year 5
Yes,
kids?
we can.
Did you see that?
Yes.
Year 5 children in England have now gone up 1 point in the international reading rankings to the point where we are now the 4th best readers in the world.
It's really brilliant.
Isn't that
brilliant?
fantastic? And they've had the pandemic to deal with. They've had, you know,
it turns out mostly to be to do with phonics. You know,
the way they learn to read.
It really works. It's really, really good. You can spell it out.
So well.
Yes, exactly. As my grandson said to me, AJ4 the other day, Grandma, you're a bum, and you know, at least you could spell it.
Right.
I took that on the chin.
The sad thing about this story, I think, is that this is for many kids, this is their first sort of example of the exam room and what it feels like. And if your experience at the age of 11 is that it was horrendous and you were in tears, what precedence does that set for yourself going through all of those other exams?
You couldn't pay me to go back. Would you be paid a sum of money to go back and sit GCSEs or A-levels again?
I was one of
but
those
you two are,
annoying
like,
children who
super
quite liked
smart,
exams.
I was
I liked
gonna say.
exams. I
So
did like
much.
them, but you can't misset them so that when they get there, they don't know what they're being asked to do.
Yeah,
That's very unfair and a terrible shame.
Let's take a pause there.
Yes.